and welcome to ABN News. I am Boyode Urejima. First, the headlines. Nigerian governors have pledged to work with the federal government, especially in the area of agriculture, to reverse the effects of the current economic recession. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation announced that there was no plan to increase the price of premium motor spirits. Gambia plans to pull out of the International Criminal Court after accusing the tribunal of persecuting and humiliating Africans. Brazil legend Carlos Alberto, the captain of the 1970 World Cup winning side, has died at the age of 72. Now the news in full. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the National Assembly to approve his administration's external borrowing plan of $29.96 billion for the execution of key programs and infrastructural projects across the country. Buhari made the request in two separate letters to both the Senate President, Bukola Saraki, and Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, which were read to the lawmakers in both chambers of the National Assembly during Tuesday's plenary. The sum, if approved, will be spent on projects in this year's budget and up till 2018.
A huge infrastructure deficit currently being experienced in the country, and the enormous financial resources required to fill the gap in the face of dwindling resources and the inability of our annual budgetary provisions to breach the infrastructure deficit, it has become necessary to resort to prudent external borrowing to bridge the financial gap, which will largely be applied to key infrastructure projects, namely power, railway, and roads projects, among others. The total cost of the projects and programs under the borrowing rolling plan is $29.960 billion, made up of proposed projects and programs loan of $11.274 billion, special national infrastructure project $10.686 billion, Euro bonds of $4.5 billion, and federal government budget support of $3.5 billion.
The President also sought legislative approval for developments totaling 180.8 billion naira in the 2016 budget to cater for votes by some sectors of the economy. The President, in the external borrowing plan, said the fund will be spent on the provision of infrastructure in agriculture, health, education, water supply, growth and employment generation, and poverty reduction through social safety net programs, among others. The President explained that the loan became necessary due to the serious infrastructural deficit the country was facing. In the 180 billion naira environment request, the President noted that it would involve the transfer of the money already appropriated for special intervention programs, both recurrent in capital to critical recurrent in capital items. According to him, the request becomes necessary due to a number of reasons, including shortfalls in provisions for personnel costs, inadequate provision for the amnesty program, continued requirements to sustain the war against insurgency, and the depreciation of the naira. A breakdown of the environment proposal showed that 71.8 billion naira is for public service wage adjustment, 35 billion naira for the amnesty program, 19.8 billion naira for the mobilization of remaining badges of Youth Corps members for the year, among others. Nigerian governors have pledged to work with the federal government, especially in the area of agriculture, to reverse the effects of the current economic recession. This is part of the outcome of a meeting of the governors in the council chambers at the presidential villa in Abuja, with the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, presiding. The council, in its last meeting on September 22nd, approved President Muhammadu Buhari's strategy to pull the economy out of recession. At the meeting, ministers and governors also debriefed the Finance Minister, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, and the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Mr. Udoma Udoma, as well as the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele on the strategies to take the country out of the woods. The governors, who blamed the dwindling power supply in the country on gas pipeline vandalism, also commended the federal government on the plan to diversify energy sources through wind and solar. Militants on Tuesday morning attacked an export line operated by Chevron Nigeria Limited at Escravos in the Warri South-West Council area of Delta State. The attack, which the Niger Delta Avengers claimed responsibility for, reportedly occurred at about 3:45 a.m. It marks the first attack by the militant group on an oil facility since it announced a ceasefire and nominated the Chief Edwin Clark-led Pan-Niger Delta Group to hold talks on its behalf with the federal government. The attack comes barely 6 days to the long-awaited meeting between President Muhammadu Buhari and the Niger Delta leaders led by Clark, slated for October 31st in Abuja. Meanwhile, the federal government has said that Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited has resumed crude oil exports from the Forcados terminal 8 months after it was shut down following militant attacks. The senior special assistant on media and publicity to President Muhammadu Buhari, Garba Shehu, disclosed this in a statement on Tuesday. And now on some business news. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation on Tuesday announced that there was no plan to increase the price of premium motor spirit, popularly known as Petrol. In a statement issued by the Group General Manager, Public Affairs Division of the NNPC, Mr. Muhammad Gabardine, said there is absolutely no plan by the federal government or any NNPC subsidiary to increase fuel price above the 145 naira level. In reference to a news report that the 145 naira per litre is not sustainable, Mr. Gabardine explained that the statement was not taken in the right context. It stated that it had a robust supply arrangement to guarantee sustainable supply of the product over a long period of time. But the corporation promised to sustain the tempo of petroleum product supply across the country in the last 3 months of the year and beyond at the current rate of 145 per litre. The NNPC added that it had resolved all issues that had to do with foreign exchange stability in order to ensure fuel price stability and distribution. Meanwhile, the Trade Union Congress has warned the federal government against any move to increase the pump price of petrol. The market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange dropped by 164 billion naira at the close of trading on Tuesday as 27 stocks closed in the red. The Nigerian Stock Exchange market capitalization dropped from 9.471 billion naira recorded on Monday to 9.307 billion naira, while the all-share index slid to 27,098.52 basis points from 27,574.95 basis points. A total of 113.498 shares, valued at 1.233 billion naira, were traded in 2,435 deals. Ashoka Cement PLC, AG Leventis Nigeria PLC, Vitafoam Nigeria PLC, Cement Company of Northern Nigeria PLC, and Dangote Cement PLC emerged as the top 5 losers, while 11 stocks appreciated in value according to the Nigerian Stock Exchange data. The share price of Ashoka Cement closed at 12.26 naira from 13.57 naira, losing 1.31 naira, while a drop of 0.04 naira was recorded on AG Leventis shares, which closed at 0.77 naira from 0.81 naira. Vitafoam shares also plummeted by 0.13 naira to close at 2.51 naira from 2.64 naira, while the share price of CCNN dropped by 0.27 naira to close at 5.23 naira from 5.50 naira. Dangote Cement share price also recorded a loss of 8.83 naira to close at 174.17 naira from 183 naira. The Bourse took charge of market activities, resulting in a decline of 1.73% in the Nigerian Stock Exchange All Share Index, with the year-to-date sliding further down to 5.39% negative. Volume traded and market turnover appreciated by 12.17% and 16.25% respectively. Presco plc, Wema Bank plc, Unity Bank plc, Calverton Offshore Support Group plc, and Skybank plc topped the gainers' chart, appreciating by 5.09%, 4.92%, 4.84%, 4.44% and 3.28% accordingly. The Nigerian Stock Exchange indices show that all sectors closed in the red zone at the end of Tuesday trading, save the oil and gas sector that appreciated by 0.53%. The industrial and banking sectors dropped by 2.15% and 0.71% respectively. And now, news from around other African nations. Gambia has said it will pull off the International Criminal Court, ICC, after accusing the tribunal of persecuting and humiliating Africans. The small West African nation joins South Africa and Burundi in withdrawing from the court. The ICC was set up to try the world's worst crimes, but has been accused of unfairly targeting African leaders. Gambian Information Minister Sheriff Bojang said the court has ignored Western war crimes. He said the ICC, for example, had failed to indict former British Prime Minister Tony Blair over the Iraq War. Speaking on state television, he said the ICC was an international Caucasian court for the persecution and humiliation of people of color, especially Africans. President Yahya Jammeh has ruled the Gambia since taking power in a coup in 1994. The ICC's chief prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, is a former Gambian justice minister. The country has been unsuccessfully trying to have the European Union indicted by the court over the deaths of thousands of African migrants trying to reach the continent by boat. South Africa said last week that it had formally begun the process of withdrawing from the ICC because it did not want to execute arrest warrants which would lead to regime change. Last year, a South African court criticized the government for refusing to arrest Sudan's president Omar al-Bashir, who is wanted by the court. Burundi has also said it will leave the court, while other African countries like Kenya and Namibia have said they might, and all but one of the ICC's 10 investigations have been Africa-based. A judge in Zimbabwe has fined a Chinese national for selling the national flag without authorization, the state-run Herald newspaper reports. The businessman named by the Herald, a 28-year-old Windyong Lee, was fined $20 and in total, 314 flags were seized. Last month, Zimbabwean officials warned that anyone who abused the flag risks persecution. Anti-government protesters have been using flags and hashtag #ThisFlag. The protest movement, initiated by a pastor, Evan Mawire, called on Zimbabweans to re-own their flag and to force politicians to answer questions to their lack of accountability in corrupt ways without fear. On passing the sentence against Mr. Windyong, presiding judge Tendia Mawe said he was showing leniency, saying the accused had saved the court's time by pleading guilty. The Chinese national was arrested after officials found the flags on display for sale at his shop in Harare, the capital. He becomes the first person to be found guilty of breaching the Flag of Zimbabwe Act, which bans any trade involving the national flag without official permission. And now we'll go on a short break. More news when we return.